engineer. And Jenny started to become an engineer, and she worked more than 10 years in product development, in project management, and in marketing and business development. She started investing in tech startups since 2014, and she's one of the 3 founding partners of Crowberry, a Nordic seed fund investing in early stage and seed emerging tech companies in the Nordics. And as I said, we really would like to make it a very interactive session. Today, we will start with questions and Jenny will give answers. And if you do have more questions, you will ask these questions. As said, either in the chat or you raise your hand and we will try to address this. Jenny, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Great
to be with you.
You're so welcome. We are very, very happy having you here today. Jenny, my first question though, tell us a little bit our background and how it led you to where you are today.
Yeah, happy to. And just want to emphasize what you said there before, that, you know, if anyone has questions and very particular questions on venture and sort of how to deal with venture capitalists, just, you know, please let them come. We're going to use this hour for this group. I see that we have not like a huge group, so everyone should be able to ask or get their questions answered as long as I have the answers. Yeah, my background. So as you said, I found my way into venture through tech. I studied engineering in Germany, actually, and then went into the digital health tech space, or med device space, actually, in prosthetics and orthotics, and was there for a while. And the last startup that I joined and worked on was in Boston. It was around an IP that came out of the Media Lab. And it was a really exciting venture from, I was there from 2011 till 14 when I found my way into venture. That's when I first got exposed to venture, really, through that startup. We worked with some major US funds and European. And it was a challenging venture, I have to say. Many external factors in our way. We had like a government shutdown there in 2013 when we were trying to apply for reimbursement codes. It just, I found it super interesting, the role that the VCs played. And what I saw there through board meetings, but also just through regular dialogues with the VCs, that they could share learnings from other startups with us. So like through them, we could sort of fast track the learnings by learning from other startup ventures that they had participated in. And I just found that super interesting. And when I moved back to Iceland, I wanted to bring more of this to the ecosystem here. So I joined an evergreen fund here and was there for 2 years before starting Crowberry together with my 2 co-founding partners, which we did in 2017. And now we're on our 2nd fund, which we raised last year. The first fund was about 40 million, and the second one about 80. It's now at 82 million euros. And we've invested in 20 companies so far, and 1 very successful exit from the portfolio.
Very good. We will go into this deeper because I have seen there are already people interested in getting to know more about how you invest, how you choose, etc., etc. Very short question and maybe also very short answer. What is or what has been your biggest career challenge?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think challenges are different. Don't want to really point towards one, but of course, it is a huge challenge to raise a venture fund, like the first fund, because you're raising on conviction. And you really have to believe yourself that you're bringing something to the table, because it's all about conviction. So I think that's one of the major challenges. Of course, it was also a challenge to work at the startup in Boston, having family also in Iceland. So yeah, these were long hours with 2 kids that we were sending back and forth here between the 2 continents.
Yeah, you already told us that what was your inspiration for founding Crowberry Capital. And I think therefore we kind of can skip this question. And my question now is like venture capitalists, as well as those who are getting funded, they are very often very male dominated. Do you feel that women are disencouraged to enter this field, and why? What's the reason?
I don't know if they are really disencouraged. I mean, if you look at the data, it's really discouraging. But you just got to do what you got to do. If you're building your venture, you should not let like the past define the future. I mean, when we were raising Crowberry, the first fund, so we have 3 female founding partners of the fund. I mean, there were not many in Europe. I think we actually run the 2nd biggest partnership now in Europe of all female partners, so which is a bit of a surprise, but we have never focused on that. And just a small story, if I may. You have to stop me if I speak much. I was reading Skin in the Game by Taleb this summer. And there he tells the story about these 2 surgeons. And they are at the same position at the hospital, and like asking people which one you would choose if one really looks the role, sleekly dressed, accurate hands, and the other one is not contained at all, has no diplomas hanging on the wall or anything. Like, which one would you choose? Would you choose the one who looks the role, or maybe the one who does not look the role, and has probably had to do or give much bigger sacrifices to get there? And I think many women in tech and venture can apply that to themselves. I mean, I would always invest in someone who I think has, put more skin in the game than someone who just plays the role.
Thank you very much for that. Any question from the crowd? So if there is no question so far, I would like to go and maybe also kind of short answers. I combine 2 questions, and then later I hand over to Andrea. The one question is, what is venture capital and who can access venture capital?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just capital that's invested into startups, mainly tech startups, both early stage and later stage. And if you can compare it to private equity, if private equity is about splitting the cake in different ways, venture capital is more about baking new cakes. So there's much more collaboration built into venture capital. It's all about growing and creating value for many, rather than moving it around.
Who can access venture capital?
I mean, all startups that have scalable business models and offer like strong value proposition to their customers. And usually it's based on new technologies. So I would say the two fundamental pillars are new technologies merged with scalable business models. But then, of course, the value proposition is the core of it. And it's always like, it's so easy to say on the venture side, like, just bring us a crisp value prop, like just make it clear. But it's just not that easy to do.
Andrea, will you take over?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea, also part of Role Model Rebels. I'm keen to ask, I asked in the chat, but no one's responded. I'm interested, is anyone here currently raising VC or looking for investment for their startup? You can just put up your virtual hand. It'd be good to understand if anyone is in that stage. Okay, cool. So a couple. Well, then I'm quite interested to know, Jenny, like what's the most common criteria for a startup to have in order to kind of be in the running for venture capital? Sorry, that's the ice cream van outside my door.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the criteria is a bit based on the stage they're at. But like super early stage, we are always focusing on the team. If they have industry expertise and just the experience that the team brings. And then, of course, we very much focus on the market trends. If it's a big market or if it's a small market, then at least fast-growing one. So, I mean, there are a few both external factors, but also internal ones. And when it's based on conviction, it's basically all about the experience and industry expertise, absolutely. But then, of course, later stage, when we're doing follow-on, maybe into A and B rounds, it's more about traction and numbers. So it differs.
Okay, and how should a business go about approaching a VC for funding?
I mean, there are many ways. I would always recommend getting warm introductions. I mean, it's not the only way. I've had seen some really good cold calls. But I would definitely recommend warm introductions. And I would reach out early when you're not fundraising before you want to fundraise. So don't look at it as a transactional thing, and try to use the dialogue to vet your business model, vet your go-to-market strategy. So have these coffees early on with the VCs, get to know them, get to know the space, ask them questions, understand like how these funds are different, because they're all different animals in some way. So just don't try to lean into the process and don't look at it as wasting time, like something that you just need to spend time on to just get capital. Make use of it to test your strategy, vet your business model and all that. And also to get more introductions, like ask the VCs to also give introductions. And often funds syndicate, work together. That's very common. Of course, sometimes they're fighting over deals, but usually they go into deals together. maybe two to three funds. So ask for those intros.
Fantastic. Mauro, can see you've got your hand up. I'm sorry, is that how I pronounce your name?
No,
yeah,
that's,
if you want
that's correct. Hi, thank
okay,
you.
great. Yeah, if you want to ask your core question.
Yes, I think it's right on the topic you're discussing, because I've seen many many kind of investor, and I've read a lot of times people say, don't waste my time, I have only 30 seconds, I'm just impressed by your presentation, how you present, I don't even care about your product. So I've seen a lot of this very hard statement about investors, and my experience also for us, what also would be very much interesting from a VC is more the experience, the network, the feedback, rather than the funding. And then my question is more or less what you said, how open are venture capitalists to share their experience, to invest in this kind of investment, and how much, so how is important for you money versus soft value that you are investing in the company? How much a company should, what should a company seek from you? I mean, if a company comes and says, look, I don't really need the money, I need your expertise. Is this something where you say, okay, maybe venture capitalist is not something for you? Or is yes, thank you?
No, definitely. I mean, it's very much about the community, about the portfolio. I mean, of course, there's knowledge that builds up within the VC funds. But actually, I will say you touched upon another point there. Before going into the value that we can provide, I think it's also about this dialogue, because you said, you know, sometimes some VCs or investors say, like, I have only got 30 minutes, just get over with it. Let's get it done, and like, I'll see if I like your case. You need to change. You need to turn those tables. If you're going to raise your venture, you have to make it super clear. I'm going there. I'm going to build this. You can come along or not. Like, if the VC always thinks that this is not going to go anywhere unless he or she invests, then you're playing a very challenging power play. So you have to have the conviction really in your heart that you're going to build this, and you're going to go. You're really going to do this, and some people are going to be fortunate enough to invest in it and gain from that investment. If you truly believe that it's a good investment, then it's much easier to sell. If you don't truly believe that it's a good investment, then it's going to be challenging to sell it to the investors. So be true to yourself. Like, when we were going out to raise our first venture fund, I mean, then we're selling basically a startup portfolio to investors that hasn't been built. It's like, when you're raising a venture fund, you're selling something that, you know, you don't know what it's going to look like. It's a portfolio that hasn't been made. So you truly have to believe that you have something to bring in order to raise that. And I don't know if we were fools or foolish enough to believe that, but at least we truly believed it. And we went out there, and of course we got a lot of no's, but we also got a lot of yeses. So I think that's key. On the other question of like, what the VCs bring to the table, I think every venture fund wants to say that they bring much more than only capital. But on that note, it's so easy for you as startup funders to do that due diligence. Just look at the portfolio. How big is it? Look at like their LinkedIn profiles, number of years in venture. Like, have they been through exits? Have they been through M&As, or have they, like, how many investments have they done? Which countries? And so on. So, I mean, that's really easy to DD.
Thank you
I
very
see
much.
there's some more hands there.
Thanks, Jenny. And Charlotte, you've got a question.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Jenny, for your time. Maybe it's going to be a bit different. I mean, and going on another topic, but I'm quite curious on how you build your ecosystem, because you said that you went to the US and then back to Iceland. So how did it work? Did you already have connections? How did you create your portfolio, and how do you find the companies, through which channels, and so on?
Yeah, I don't know how to post this. So, I mean, when I was in the States, I was working in a startup. I was running. I was with a startup. So that was a different time. But looking for and basically just through industry. I mean, I was with a publicly traded company in that med device space before. And then when there was a professor at MIT who wanted to build a startup around this IP that he had basically hired in people from the industry, and I was one of the hires, and we put the team together. So it was not really like this normal startup where the founder just gets going, because the founder was a professor, and he did not become operational. He just took a seat on the board. So that's how that happened. On finding deal flow, so we have a team in Iceland and a team in Copenhagen, and we invest across the Nordics. So we basically just go to the startup events. We try to be approachable, reachable, and then, of course, we're constantly looking at market trends, tech trends, and making our own convictions on spaces. And so we both do like outreach and inbound. We reach out to startups if we think they're doing interesting things. And then, of course, startups, call on us. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Thank you.
We have got lots of questions from Alice as well. Alice also said she's actually at the moment looking to raise VC. So she's quite keen on knowing kind of what are the most common questions VCs will ask when considering an investment.
All right. So let's assume that you are super early stage, pre-traction, you're just getting your venture off the ground, just getting started. Is it safe to assume that? Okay, so if you're raising from that position, I would focus on the team. You will get a lot of questions about the team, experience, expertise, and if you have sort of the hustler, the hacker, and the hipster, like if you fill all the roles. So you want to see a founding, like a strong founding team. some VCs, I mean, there are a few thoughts about what's the perfect founding team, but we have invested in solo founders. We have invested in founding teams as large as 13 co-founders, and anything in between. And I don't think we have the perfect recipe for that. The main thing is to have the expertise there and have different DNAs. Like, you don't want to invest in 3 co-founding partners that all look the same and have the same experience. So you will definitely, I assume, get questions around that. And then it's about the value prop, to carefully and carefully communicate that, like, and also don't get fixated on the numbers. As long as you can present that the market is big and there's a big opportunity there, I would not go into the details on the number side, because when you meet many founders, that's not what you remember. You don't remember if the market was X or Y. What you do remember are the stories. You do remember, like, yeah, this founder like has a very different approach to go to market. So I would focus on standing out with regards to telling a good story that's memorable and easy for the VC to take to their colleagues and tell the story onwards. And so it's easy to carry on the pitch. If you need a structure for a deck or something like that, I would just go to the Sequoia website. They have the perfect deck. The structure is there. That's where you don't want to invent the wheel. Like, just answer them in questions. Why now? Why you? And all that. So I would not go creative there.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's answered all of your questions, Alice, as well, and probably some others from other people. So what do venture capitalists want in return for funding?
Shares? I don't know. I mean, it's about investing, and the returns that we need to give to our LPs. I mean, these are just sort of hard figures. Our product is just the returns that we then bring forward. So it's about basically making returns from the portfolio. That's what we need. That's what we need to be successful in VC and being able to raise our next fund. When we go and raise our next fund, we need to take the track record from the last portfolio and show that these are some good investments. And the value to the startups on the other side is all the knowledge that sits with the fund of going through all these ventures.
Fab. Anne Charlotte has a question.
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you said before that sometimes you can go like 2, 3 investors. So my question is about how likely are like venture capital or investors open to work with others?
Most are super open. If you go to deal room and just look at the deals, you can usually see 2 or 3 funds behind each deal. And I think everyone is fighting the FOMO to lose out on deals. And if you see that other VC funds are interested, and then often there is something about the startup, and then you start also looking at it. So that's pretty common, although no one wants to, no one will admit that they are, but there is always this FOMO in this game. And you might have heard that representative of the Rolling Stones, he was famous for having said no to the Beatles. And that's of course what VCs are most afraid of, saying no to the next unicorn. So when you go into this dialogue, you have to believe that you're building the next unicorn.
Thank you very, very much, Jenny. And I was just interested, and this is another question, but how did you get to know your founding partners?
So Hekla and I worked together at a company before in the digital health space or the med device space. I was a product manager working from headquarters, and she was a product marketing manager working out of Shanghai. And we worked together there. So that's when I first got to know her. And then I got to know Helga at the Evergreen Fund. And that's actually where we all three came together and decided to leave that one and raise our own.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I do also have a question. Is are there special questions you think that founders should ask venture capitalists?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you should always know your audience, and if there's something about the venture fund that you don't know, like ticket sizes, how old or the vintage of the fund that they're investing from. Like if you go to a fund and they're already 5 years into the fund that they are investing from, that means that they might only have 5 to 7 years left till they need to exit your venture. So you don't want to come in with a super fresh startup into that fund cycle, so late into the fund cycle. So it's good to know the vintage year of the fund. Otherwise you will get pressure soon for them to exit. Sorry.
No, that's all good. Sorry, I was the one who was like,
Okay.
Another question, you're only investing in the Nordics, but how do you find and evaluate, you already told us, but how you define the business you are funding?
We just go to the startup events. We look for them. We try to be approachable at these events, and like just have open offices. So usually they just call on us, try to have the brand visible, / tech barbecue and all these events.
How big is the competition between the other venture capitalists? Because everyone wants to get the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the unicorns.
Yeah. I mean, it is becoming more competitive. That's the good news for the startups out there. That like capital has been going into venture more and more, at least for 2-3 years ago, when interest rates were so low in Europe and the US. Capital was floating into VC because the value was being created. There was much more value being created there before companies were going public. what has happened now is, of course, that it's changing a bit with higher interest rates. So there's not as much capital flowing in. So, and I'm sure you're probably seeing it, that already this year, it's probably a bit harder to raise venture than like last year. But I actually think these like macro trends don't really affect good venture funds and good startups. Like if you're in there, you have good tech and you have a strong value proposition, you will find funding. And on the competition, I mean, our experience is that it's more of a collaborative thing. We have co-invested with many seed funds in the Nordics. And then we have co-investments with some more famous funds, like Andreessen Horowitz came into one of our portfolio companies. That was their first investment in the Nordics in 2019. And of course, there has been, in 2019 and before COVID, we saw more of the US funds coming to Europe. And that was more around the A-round stages. Now we're seeing that many of the A-round funds in Europe, at least the biggest one in the Nordics, are more going into seed. So that should be helpful for the startups to have more competition in the space. But I don't think you will see or hear from the VCs that it's a competitive space, because it's very collaborative. But of course, there's also competition around this, definitely.
Yeah, sure. We have one question from the audience. It's Virginia. She asked, what do you think about the relationship between venture capitals and the new investments in tokenization-oriented startups?
I think it's a bit about beliefs. I mean, if you believe in that space, you go there. And venture capital is just about, I mean, it's just about getting expertise and funding. So in the end, it's about being able to pay salaries and grow value or build a product, whatever ways you figure out to get there. You know, I don't think it should matter.
Thank you, Jenny. We do have other questions, but before I'll give them the stage, I would like to just let you know from your experience. Have you ever invested in a unicorn, or have you funded something this was near to a unicorn? And as you were just saying, you did it in collaboration, but also to just like mitigate risks. But is there any company you can name that basically came near to a unicorn? So in our portfolio, we're yet to see unicorns. There are some good ones that have unicorn potential, but they have not become unicorns. I worked for one in the med device space. It went from a very small one and up to a unicorn status, which was a good learning curve. But we are just still so early in our portfolio. So they're yet to come. There are a few companies that have raised like really successful A and B rounds that we have high hopes for. Okay. I have Livia asking a question. It's like, what would you define your ideal investment case beside the return on investments?
Yeah, You mean doing good for mankind?
For it,
Um,
you're not an engineer, so you want to earn money. There must be something else. But of course, for example, if you say, well, we have a special look at sustainability on ESG and stuff like that, is
yeah.
is it just pure investment you're looking?
I will admit I sometimes go deep into some rat holes, and I've been very much focusing on governance lately, so the G in the ESG, and I think the climate crisis, I mean, we have the tech solutions today. Our main challenge today is just governance in general, both on the state level and also in firms. So companies that can combine the big data that's out there, the AI, all the new AI solutions, and make use of these tools to sort of help our societies to make better decisions, to just bring better governance in general. That excites me. Definitely.
This is very important for everyone who's also working in this area. There's also, and Charlotte has a question. I think this is also a question I would have loved to ask. She said, do you often see venture capital partnering up with marketing agencies, consultants in the attempt to support the startups they have invested in? And she said, just asking, because I see marketing related issues are among the main reasons for some venture capital backed startups to fail or not grow properly. And I would say, yes, that's a question I would have asked as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we meet good consultants or good agencies, when we find them, we definitely recommend them. We have not really, gone into like formal partnerships. So I can only speak for our funds, but I'm sure there are some funds that do that. We very much want to focus on building and helping the teams to build as strong companies as they possibly can from the inside. So try to keep as much knowledge as possible inside the startups. But of course, like there are some things that you just have to get consultancy on or outsource. And then, I mean, it's just from being in the space for a while that you sort of call on people that are good.
Yeah, sure. There's at least one question, and I think also, is there any red flags that may deter venture capitals from funding that she, of course, should be aware of, or venture capital? Any red flags where you say, well, I think you already mentioned something what I think is super important. You look at the team rather than the numbers. And you look at the diversity of the team if you invest in early stage. So is there any red flags? Is there anything where you would say, oh, no, this looks like this is something we would not touch at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely if it's not a scalable venture, we don't see a scalable business model, that's definitely a red flag. If the founders are sort of the same profile, don't have like different DNAs or different knowledge to bring to the table or experience to bring to the table, that's a red flag. And I would say just diverse in general, like not only gender, I'm just thinking also with regards to backgrounds. And then, yeah, I would say if we've been following them for a while and like we haven't seen much difference. Like if you've been speaking to someone or hearing from someone for 2 years and it's still at the same place, it just tells me that they're not going anywhere. So often we follow people for a while, and you really want to see progress and that they're moving. It's fine to move in the wrong direction as long as you move and realize it and then get going in the right direction the next time.
Okay.
So I would say that's a red flag. Yeah.
There
are many more. These are the ones that come to mind.
Okay, I'm just asking because you said, and I heard this from various other venture capitalists as well, how important it is that you look at the team and the diversity of the team. And do you make any requirements if you invest into a startup that certain people on the team stay for a certain amount of time?
We usually do reverse vesting with the founders, with a 1-year cliff and a 4-year package. So we want them to stay there for 3 to 4 years.
Very much. So I'm coming back to my list. We are coming to the end, but I have so the unicorn we have answered is like okay, raising money from a venture capital firm is extremely challenging. What other revenues options can startups look up for?
Yeah, right. I mean, I would always say, like, use the grants that are available in your countries. I mean, often there are good grants available, so always take the free money as well. Of course, angel funding, crowdfunding. There are some who just bootstrap, but that's a way to just fund through your customers if you can build the product to that level. But I mean, these are the usual ways of looking for funding.
Okay, I have another question. I think you kind of already answered it. However, I will address it again. You have a wealth of experience supporting founders with building strong teams and businesses. What's the most common area you have found startup needs to focus on in order to ensure sustainable growth?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, so you have big experience in supporting startups, and the question is, what's the most common area you have found startups need to focus on in order to ensure sustainable growth?
Yeah, I mean, at the early stage, it's all about the value proposition and leaning into the product market fit. It's a very chaotic, I would say it's a chaotic process going through product market fit. It's the hardest period in every company's lifetime to really figure out the needs that you're solving, to truly understand the value that you're bringing to the customer, like what pain points you are solving, and if there are some that you're missing or not. So you need to have the dialogue totally open with the customers on a founding level. Like, you can't outsource this if you're going to build a good product. And this takes time, and often the findings are not the ones that you were hoping for. Like, it's somehow different than, like, because it's a iterative process. So it's good to look at it almost like, you know, engineering a product. Like, you just need to go through the development steps of the product market fit and try to go fast through the cycles and give it the time it needs. Because if you start scaling up something that's not truly solving a need, or like at a very different or wrong price level compared to the value that you're bringing to the customers. That can be a very expensive mistake.
Okay, Jenny, thank you so much. I have one last question for you, and then we have some minutes left for the audience. Is like, what's the best piece of advice you have received?
That's a good one. When we were raising our first fund, Brad Burnham from Union Square Ventures just said, like, just get in the game, just get going. That was a good one. Another one which is quite funny was when we're raising our second fund, and some LPs had different thoughts about the structure of the fund. We got this advice: never marry for money. So that was a funny one, and stayed with me. So, and I think that applies to startups as well.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I think it's closing up was never marry for money. I think this is a very good one. And if there are questions left, please raise your hand. I see Anne-Charlotte has raised her hand. And is there anyone else? We have something like 6-7 minutes to go.
Yeah, me again, sorry. I just wanted to jump back on what you said when you advise startups to go and look for like grants, for instance, in their country or so on. How does that influence a venture capitalist to invest? Like if a startup already raised public money, whether it's national, EU, or does that trigger?
It has no impact, at least not for us. I mean, it just shows grit, I think. That's just helpful to have more funds, more bigger funds in the bank. The only thing I would be careful about is not to adjust your venture or your startup to the grant. Just make sure that you're not adapting your journey to the grant in order to get it. As long as the grant fits your journey, just, take all the free money you can get. I don't see any problems with that.
It's basically the same advice, like don't marry for money. So don't adjust your venture to get the grants. So, and I think this is a very, very good advice. And sorry, Charlotte, that I jumped in here. And do you have any question? Does anyone else have a question? Deborah, she just said, thank you very much, excellent session. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? And if this is not the case so far, I don't see anyone. I would first of all say, of course, thank you very, very much, Jenny, for this really exciting insight into the life of venture capitalists. And for all the others, as Andrea already wrote in the chat, it's just like join us. It's for free, the Tuesday sessions. We run them 3 times a month. And we will also run a series of new work, but that's more to come maybe in November only. However, having said that, everyone who listened today, thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, Jenny, thank you so much for your time. I've never been to Iceland, so I have to come to see what you're doing and, have a look at all your unicorns or to be unicorns. Thank you so much. And
yeah, thank you for having me.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone, and see you soon next time at one of our Role Model Rebel sessions. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.